if you have a club of all ages in Hollywood called the Odyssey, right? All ages meet all ages, and you got a club that's open from 10 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning. And they have a bar on the right side of it, and you have adults in it. I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm involved in kilos. I'm involved in coke. I'm involved in, meeting Hollywood stars. I'm walking in any club. I got people protecting me. I'm a big shot. I'm driving Porsches. People don't pay their bills. I'm taking Rolls Royces, 4-wheel drive me. I mean, who would, I was caught up in it.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I am here with Lang Martinez, and he is a homeless advocate and an advocate for victims of sexual abuse. And so we're going to have an interview and talk about his life and the progression of his life up to this moment. Check it out. Well, I mean, guys, I want to talk about the Odyssey and your story, but let's start at the beginning. Like, where were you born?
I was born in Los Angeles, West Side Los Angeles. I was actually born in Inglewood, and my family moved to Westchester, California. And that's close to the beach area, like Playa del Rey area. Marina del Rey. Yeah.
Were you raised, middle class?
No, my family, I was raised by my stepfather. So I didn't know my real father until I was 11 and found out I was Mexican, and my name's Martinez. So my name growing up was Lang Patrick Huff. So my mom divorced my father. I have connections. My family has connections. There was an article that was written. It was Ventura County Homeless Advocate Seek Redemption. And I was interviewed by a gentleman by the name of Mark Alvarado, and he broke down who my family was, because I've never used them to get me anywhere. So my family is connected to the La Piñon newspaper. It's one of the largest Hispanic publications in the United States, which at this time, it's owned by the LA Times. So they're rich, and my mom left my father, and she married a gentleman who is my dad, who was a machinist. So I was raised with a great-grandma, a sister, a brother. They're stepbrothers, but it's my brother and my sister. And we were raised in a 900 square feet house up on 94th Street in Westchester. And the garage was converted to a bedroom for my brother and I. And while my sister was in the bedroom, shared a bedroom with my grandmother.
Okay. I mean, what was school like for you?
Well, yeah, I think that's where the confusion came in, because I'm a Martinez. I mean, I was a Huff. I never knew who my father was. My mom was getting some child support from my father. So me being a part of the Martinez family, I went to a parochial school. So I went to Good Shepherd Lutheran School, while my siblings went to public schools. So I was in parochial school up until I was in 6th grade.
Okay. Did you get into trouble? I mean, were you a good student?
No, I definitely wasn't a good student. There was mayhem and trouble in regards to not so much my family. My father never put hands on me, or my mother. It was the family that I was connected to. They were trouble.
The family that you were connected to, who's that?
Yeah, my stepfather's family, their brothers, their siblings, my grandma and grandpa. The people that I knew as my family, they knew that I wasn't really, Gary's son. So, that was always confusion why I was treated differently.
Okay. Did you get into any trouble, or?
Well, yeah, I got kicked out of parochial school.
Why?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was in the kickball line, and somebody cut in front of me, and I ended up pushing them. I think that was 3rd grade or so. And I remember back then the family would come down and they would talk to the principal. And, it's under a Christian umbrella. And back then they paddled you. So mom made the decision to have me paddle with the wooden paddle. And I think at that time my principal his name was Appleman. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you said they paddled you and they kicked you out?
Yeah, I got paddled and I got suspended for 1 day. Yes, sir.
Okay, but did you graduate high school? Did you stay in that school until you?
No, I was there until I was in sixth grade, and then I went to a public school, and the public school was Override Junior High, which was in Westchester, and then from there I went into Westchester High School. I went to Westchester High School, and no, I didn't finish high school.
Okay, what was the issue?
When I was in 11th grade, I was working for a bike shop called Action Cycle. I was racing BMX. I was sponsored. I think it was at that time, it was called Team Kurahara. I think I was on Team Thruster, and I was racing BMX and playing baseball, but the grades weren't there. I wasn't going to graduate. And at that time, there was smoking weed and drinking beers and going to the beach parties. And then somebody mentioned something to me and told me about this place where I could get a job, and this guy allowed people to party. I can get into it briefly. I'd love to. So I ended up taking this job at this location, and there was young boys there, and the kind of job we did was cutting glass. And this gentleman he sold cocaine, and he sold cocaine on a different level. So, so me having troubles at home, now I quit the bike shop. I'm working for this gentleman. It's walking distance from my house, over there on 94th Street. And eventually at that time, that was back in 1980, the coke, it was the Peruvian flake, and what he would do is the employees would get the coke from him, and he was doing stuff outside his business. And he pulled me to the side eventually, and he said, "Would you like to learn the business of cocaine?" And that's kind of like where my life went off. And, from there, I ended up I was taught the business of cocaine. I mean, at that time, back in 1980, cocaine was going for $100 a gram, ounces, you got 28 grams, you got you're paying anywhere, the average individual's paying anywhere from, 1,900 all the way up to 2,500, depending on who you were purchasing it. But it was a thing back then. I mean, there was I think they talk about it in Styx, the song called Snowblind, and I was a part of that. So I learned how to, especially in the clubs, where the money was being made, you learned how to put 28 on 28. You were connected to shops where you were getting your cut, with the triple beams. You were bagging it up, you were biddling it. And that was used at the club scene. And the one club was the Odyssey. And the Odyssey is the most recognized club and known by Eddie Nash. So I sold there. And then in regards to
wait, real quick, who was Eddie Nash?
Yeah, Eddie Nash was known in the 1980s. He was Pakistani, and he was considered a gangster, and he supplied the who's who with the best cocaine, and probably in the Los Angeles area, California area. There's many articles on Eddie Nash.
Okay. So he was supplying the cocaine. You were selling.
Correct. He was supplying.
Were you working were you continuing the racing BMX, or you dropped that and you just started working?
I dropped everything, and I ended up leaving home, and I ended up staying with this gentleman who ended up being my perpetrator.
Okay. Were you working at the club?
No, I didn't work at the club. I sold at the club. Okay. The Odyssey, there's a lot of articles, and I'm involved with articles written about me. And there was an article that was written, and one of the things about the Odyssey is that they didn't want to discuss because it was connected to the Wonderland murders. The Wonderland murders were murders that took place in July of 1981. And the story behind it is that Eddie Nash was connected to John Holmes, the porno star. Information was given. Eddie Nash ended up being robbed and taken at gunpoint. There was some things taken from him, jewelry. And then the story is that Eddie Nash recognized something that belonged to him that John Holmes was wearing. And then from there, he was never really convicted of it, but they called it the Wonderland murders. So the Wonderland murders were, they say, one of they were the worst murders in California, worse than Manson. There was 5 individuals there, and individuals, they say, I don't know, sent people up there they say for Eddie to get even. And there was 4 individuals that were bludgeoned to death. And there was 1 individual that lived. So they ended up making a big deal. They had detectives out of LA, Robert Sosa, Mark Lang, those type of individuals. So it was unsolved. I mean, when I talk to like Rolling Stones, or I talk to Marlo Stern over at the Daily Beast or different entities, I always ask them, why do you make it such a big deal out of it? And we got movies and unsolved murders. That type of situation that taking place, whoever did those murders, they were gone 1 hour after it happened, and we'll never know who they are. Eddie Nash was involved with the mob. Eddie Nash was involved with the Colombians. Eddie Nash had ties with LAPD, with the movie industry. Eddie Nash was very well known. He owned quite a few clubs. He had a club also. I think it was a Starwood. And, he had that club, and that went up in flames, I think, in 82. And then eventually the Odyssey went up in flames in 85. So my advocation is about telling the true story about the Odyssey. And they never picked up on that. I mean, every time they talk to me, they don't want to talk about it. So I was in a place where I was groomed to sell cocaine, taught how to sell cocaine. And the perpetrators that were there were grooming the individuals that were either being let out of the Odyssey, or they were there taking young individuals home with them. You have to remember, the tabloid said that the Odyssey was a place where young people found their identity. And I have quite a few people, including Dr. Lois Lee, Children Night, is a validation, is we're part of a Me Too movement, going back to the 80s, organized crime, everything in regards to the movement about bringing this awareness, especially now. I was there firsthand when this was taking place.
So how real quick, how old were you?
I was 17 years old.
17 years old. And
Yes,
okay, and you moved in with a man. And what was his name?
We can say his name one time. I'm under advisement of counsel.
You could choose a different name. I just want to know who to refer to.
Right. Well,
we go to John, if you want, or Tom or something.
Well, you know what? I'd like to do this. I was told that I'm able to. On my Google, you'll see a case that I'm involved in, and you'll see the name of the individual that we're in LA Superior Courts with. I actually have one of the first cases that go back 42 years now, and it says the perpetrator's name. And I have a very good legal team, and it was actually under John Doe. They protect perpetrators, and it was about a year and a half ago, the judge said that we're going to name the perpetrator. So that's on my Google. So, we'll
Okay, well, let's just go with John. So you moved.
What?
You moved in with John.
Yeah.
And you believe, he moved you in there to groom you because of what, being a sex slave, or just having sex with you, or?
No, that didn't take place. What was taking place is I was selling to the Odyssey. The Odyssey had a bunch of young boys there and young girls there. So the gentleman was definitely getting his supply from Eddie. I've only met Eddie one time, so I want to make that clear. Somebody, like Eddie Nash, you're not going to meet Eddie at 17 years old, especially being strung out yourself, or using. So my gentleman, the gentleman, you said John, right?
Right.
Yeah. So obviously John had connections. So in order for me to sell in his club, it's like being on prison, being on the yard, you got to get that permission. So what was basically taking place at that time is that there was more to the story, because it's a club of all ages. And if you read the tabloids, it talked about broken people, runaways, people that had, young children that had issues with family, movie stars, rich and famous. They would come to the Odyssey, and this club was open from 10 o'clock at night to 5 a.m. Well, it also had a bar in it as well. back then in those days, it just wasn't at 2 o'clock in the morning that the freaks came out at night. The freaks were already there.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what was there? Is there an actual organization that's luring these young boys into the club?
No, you wouldn't have. I have to be very careful. No, man, it's a club of all ages. See, when you said it's an organization, no. If you have a club of all ages back in the 1980s, I don't know when he opened it, so I can't be specific. I or you will elaborate on the date it was open. If you have a club of all ages in Hollywood called the Odyssey, right? All ages meet all ages, and you got a club that's open from 10 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning, and they have a bar on the right side of it, and you have adults in it. Now, it's not an organization. The organization what was the organization or the people involved or the people that opened up the club to let this happen.
Okay. So,
so
men are going there to pick up young boys or girls. Is this boys and girls? Is it?
There was young females there. Yeah. The club itself identified a club of all ages. Find your identity. That was straight, homosexual, bisexual, lesbian. There was children, broken children. They were lost just like I was.
Okay. So how did this whole thing progress?
Well, it ended up progressing as, selling the cocaine, and then from selling the cocaine there, and then being utilized to sell the other cocaine, as far as the quantities to different clubs, such as the Chamois, the Mother Lode, I think Backstage Studio 12, and the Sunset Strip. That was a nude club. How it progressed is my mother got involved with the authorities. How my mom got involved, that's I believe in God. So how my mom got involved is I'm not home. I'm living in right at Delray. I'm with this guy. My mom's parked across the street. She's concerned for me. And I can tell that part. So I wrote that article. It was called Truth Nobody Knows about my sexual abuse and rape. My mom's parked across the street with my sister in the car. She pulls up across the street and she puts a gun to his head and she tells the man to stay away from her property. He reaches down, he bends over, tries to hug my mom. My mom's not having it. He ends up saying something to her, and my mom ended up leaving the scene and she took off. My mom at that time was in contact with different agencies. At that time, I think Daryl Gates was the chief of police. That was Redondo Beach and different areas. So I went in a roundabout. So my mom found out about this, that I was involved in something that she shouldn't really get involved in, but she did. Is she was in a meeting for mothers, mothers with, children that are bad, lost, support group. And my mom was in the support group, and I have the name Lang. And my mom walked out of the meeting, and this lady runs after my mom and says, "I know your son." And my mom says, "How do you know Lang?" Well, I have a head shop, it's called New World, and it was located in a market in Inglewood. And my mom said, "I understand. Your son is with this individual named John, and they have an account with us where they're buying spindles, they're buying bearings, they're buying scales, they're buying cut, and your son is purchasing these things in quantities, a couple scales, diagrams, whatever, and that's how my mom kind of knew what I was involved with John."
Okay. And that's when did she go to you? What did she say? Did she try and convince you, like, hey, come home, this is not going to end well, you're going to go to jail?
No, she did try talking to me. She was talking to me before she did that. And I ended up staying with him. And I think at that time there's more to it. My mom, after she put the gun to the head, my mom kind of left things alone, knowing that hopefully, it would end up right. And it did, but it didn't. I'm a 17-year-old. I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm involved in kilos. I'm involved in coke. I'm involved in, meeting Hollywood stars. I'm walking in any club. I got people protecting me. I'm a big shot. I'm driving Porsches. People don't pay their bills. I'm taking Rolls Royces, 4-wheel driving. I mean, who would, I was caught up in it. And plus
Right.
I'm doing it. I remember one time there was a phone call, and I was asked to do something, and I was with a gentleman we'll call Michael. So we shoot down to a valley area. It was either Nordoff or Parthenia, and it's this white house. It's got a white fence around it, but they're nice houses right there down towards Zelzor, Balboa, and that in the valley. And just knock on the door. So I got this package, and I knock on the door, and it was the one that just passed away. It was Jim Brown. Jim Brown opened the door, saw me. I was white. I'm Mexican, but I'm white. Told me to sit down, and he went to the phone. I remember yelling on the phone, and I remember looking over. I remember the person says, "Big Jim," and I remember looking over, and Richard Pryor had no shirt on. He was in his boxers, and yeah, Richard Pryor. Yeah.
Richard Pryor, the comedian?
Yeah, the one that just passed away. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he lived on Nordoff. Huh? Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, I can get, yeah. So, before you get into it, just so a little bit of validation. So the night in regards to what happened to me, right, we were with the Cher. Cher was with Les Dudek at that time. Les Dudek put together a band called Black Rose, and that was at the Forum. And she was the front band. The back band was Molly Hatchet. And John, my perpetrator, his sister, played studio music, but at that time, Les Dudek, his bass player, was not feeling well. So my perpetrator, John, his sister's either boyfriend or husband, was filling in for Les that night. So, we were there, we were backstage. So what took place with me took place after that concert.
Okay. Well, what was that? What took place after that concert? What?
I was sexually abused and I was raped.
Okay. And
Yeah,
this is at the concert, or?
no, it was after the concert. Yeah. I don't want to get into specifics because of legalities, but yeah, I was after that concert. Yeah, no, I was sexually abused and I was raped. Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you go to the police? Did you?
No. When something like that happens, you have to understand, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the media. You have to understand about the grooming. When a situation like that happens, the individual that's doing it, whether it's to me or to somebody else, is trying to make that individual feel comfortable about what's taking place. It's not something just, right. It's about the grooming process, being groomed. I was at the Odyssey, selling, and, there was people in there, and, they were trafficked out, by security, or taking the cars, or taken home. And the individual I was involved with was part of it with another individual. So there's a whole process of grooming, when it comes to any type of situation where you're sexually abused, man.
Okay. Did you feel like, would you feel guilty? Did you feel like you were selling drugs and weren't in a position to go to the police?
No.
Feel like you brought it on
Right.
to yourself, or?
Well, after that took place, that was something that I forgot about. I mean, what took place with me was, my prison experiences, what took place in Hollywood. That situation, I blacked out of my mind until a few years ago. I didn't really realize what was going on with me because, my pain. I wrote an article. It was called Nobody Knows But Me, God Did. And I wrote an article, about me having sobriety 3 times, 5 years, keep relapsing, and people would say, "Lang, why the 5 years?" And I would always say because of the pain, but I didn't know what the pain was because, it's a regressed memory. And the memory was the realization that it happened to me too. When I'm not homosexual, I'm not bisexual, but when you're involved and see these things happen, you got a stereotype, of the individual, that it's happening to. And now in my older years, I see the destruction that it also caused them, whether you're heterosexual, you're homosexual, or lesbian, it doesn't matter. God, there's a judge and the fact that you were violated, it doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So what happened after that? Did you stay living with John, or did you move out? Did you, at that point, when did you keep selling drugs? Did you stay around the Odyssey? Were you,
Matt, what I like to do, yeah, we can talk about something that goes into, we do have a case that's filed in regards to the specifics, in regards to that, right? I can't really get into the specifics. Did I end up staying? I can answer that. Yeah, of course I ended up staying. I was thought in my mind that this guy, loved me. That's what perpetrators do. We can get into the story if you want about, the criminal,
yeah,
and about the things that happened to others, and those stories. I mean, I'm really honored. You're the first individual. I've had interviews set up, with, like I said, with different media groups. I've been to Hollywood. They've talked to me. Talk about the validation we know. You're the first individual to be able to interview me and talk about a story that hasn't been told. That they don't. This is the perfect time to tell the story. I mean, I was there. I was there and I saw what they did. In regards to the murders, I'll be real blunt with you. I feel bad for the families of the lost ones, but to be honest with you, to make a big deal about individuals that were involved in what they were involved in and what they did, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I really have no feelings for those individuals that got killed. I really don't. I really don't care. In regards to the tabloids making a big deal about unsolved, I mean, come on. I mean, you've been to prison. I've been to prison. We've been around gangsters. We've been around killers, right? When you got somebody that's calling the shots like that, right? Those people were already terminated immediately after that took place. I mean, we're already now in 2023. We have no DNA. We have DNA. Come on, unsolved. There's nothing to solve, and you never will. It's over with. That's the problem. You got a gentleman right now that was in a movie. I don't know if you watched it, about Liberace's lover, Scott Thorson. Are you familiar with the movie?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, well, there's a movie about Liberace. He was a young guy. He was 16 years old. He was Liberace's lover. That's in Rolling Stones, and it's in Daily Beast. It talks about the only live witness. Well, that's a bunch of bullshit. We reached out to Scott Thorson recently, and Scott Thorson. There was an article that just came out in the Rolling Stones by Andrea Marks. The first one was with Marlo Stern. That was at the Daily Beast. And then we were talking to Andrea Marks with the Rolling Stone. There was an article that talks about Scott Thorson and talks about the Wonderland murder. He's released from High Desert. And in the article, it says, that's why I do have a team. We reached out to him. In the article, it says that Liberace sent me out because he was in business with Eddie Nash and the clubs. And he sent me out to go get the money from the door. You and I both know. I mean, anybody knows that there's not a whole lot of money at the door. I mean, Liberace at that time could probably wipe his ass and probably sell shit. We could probably sell shit toilet paper and get more money than was ever at the door. I mean, let's be real. Scott also says that when he went there, that he contacted Eddie Nash and he ordered a pound of cocaine for himself. That's ridiculous. You're picking up door money that's not going to equate to that, and you're looking at the cost. You're looking at the cost of a pound of cocaine back then. 16 ounces. I mean, let's no. But they write this. I believe Scott Thorson. I believe the part about Liberace. I don't believe that took place. I mean, we know of Eddie Nash. And to order that, and then he makes another statement in the Rolling Stones article. He says we know they were drug addicts, and some say they were dirt bags, and they we have to have closure. And I believe that some of these people are still alive. Well, we read, Scott, they're not alive. You know that. And with Scott Thorson at that time, being with Liberace at 16 at the time that I was around talking about collecting door money, well, Scott Thorson was an adult himself. Scott Thorson knows exactly what happened. And we know about those parties and about the things that took place with Liberace and other movie stars. I mean, we know that. I mean, we know that as a people. We know Hollywood. Scott Thorson was there. Scott Thorson's only telling the part that he wants to tell to try to continue to market himself to see where he can get, get paid where he's at right now at 64 years old. And I feel very sorry for him because
So you continued to sell drugs.
Yes, sir.
Did you get caught? Like what was the?
Well, yeah, I ended up there was an arrest one time, and I had a large quantity, and I was taken to a holding place.
Well, wait, how did you get caught? Like, I mean,
he was under investigation. So we're going back to, well, John. So we're going back to my perpetrator because it's in the case. So right, we did eventually get busted. I was driving the car, and because of 17 years old and living that lifestyle, right, I knew what to do. So at that point in time, when we went down there and we were in custody, I ended up saying it belonged to me. So, when that takes place at that time, you got two individuals arrested, and I'm the guy driving the car with the cocaine, and you got two detectives there, and you say it belongs to me, and that was what I was supposed to do and I was taught to do. Back then as a minor, you weren't getting time. And if you were an adult, then we're looking at it as, why is this adult with this minor? The bottom line is, officer, it was my cocaine. And I went to the substation and I was released to my mother. And, I went back to him.
Did you end up getting prison time? What happened? What was the resolution for that?
Well, the resolution was, after what took place with me, I can't get into the circumstances, but eventually, I turned 18 years old. I was no longer involved in his life. And eventually I was a salesman. I've always been in the sales. And I ended up back on cocaine. And the thing to do back then was freebasing. So now we're in 1982, 1983. So I started using it again. And that's when, you would put the coke in the bottle and you would separate it with the ether and you would pull it out and put it on the glass. That's the way they did it back then. That was introduced to Hollywood, the freebasing, what Richard Pryor did with the ether. That's how he caught on fire, is with the ether base. I mean, that's how Ricky Nelson went down in his plane, was freebasing. So, there was a way to rock it up. You had either, chemist basic solution, or you separated with chemist ammonia, and then you would pull it out with the ether. So I ended up snorting coke again and ended up doing coke again and losing jobs. And eventually, I'm on coke. And eventually in 1986, I ended up robbing a Kmart. I ended up robbing a Kmart with another gentleman. It was a situation. Well, yeah, we actually ended up, we were boosting at that time, and we got the refund. And as we were coming out of Kmart, security came after us, and the other gentleman with me ended up falling down, and I ended up pulling an unloaded firearm at security, and I got away for a short time.
And you say, well, how'd they catch up with you?
Well, when the guy felt out, he ended up saying lying. He actually had the keys to the car, and I ended up running across the parking lot, and I broke into a house while the helicopters and stuff were looking for me. And eventually, I went over the back fence and got a ride from somebody from Albuquerque on San Fernando Road.
Okay, but eventually you got arrested. What, a few days later they come get you?
Yeah, they came and got me a few weeks later. Yeah, they had the apartment where I was at. They had it surrounded. Yes, sir.
So you were you brought downtown?
Well, yeah, I was arrested in the Valley. I was arrested in Van Nuys, and then from Van Nuys you go to the substation in Van Nuys, and then because where the crime took place, I ended up going to Foothill Division.
Okay.
So from Foothill Division, I ended up, eventually I ended up going to LA County. LA County back in those days was no joke. I mean, it was a free-for-all. You'd go in, it took 3 days to get booked in, and then you would end up going to the 9,000 floor. That's where I learned to survive. Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh man, I mean, they had bunks. You were on the floor. They didn't have computer systems, so you had count. You had to go on the roof. People were fighting for the phone. I mean, you had blacks, whites, and I had this name Martinez, and they were taking shit then. if you were wearing tennis shoes or something, it was all about, hey, what size are those? And if you didn't say my size and get up and start chucking them, they were gonna, you were gonna get your shit taken. If you were on the phone more than your time allocated, you had a bunch of guys on the waiting to get on the phone in line. Yeah, you better get off the phone because they were gonna grab it. So I was very fortunate. I was wearing some Nikes back then with the blue. I had the blue suede Nikes with the white swoosh, and there was a big black guy that came up to me and he asked me if I wanted some candy and, smoke. Do I need a cigarette? And, what's up with those shoes? And he left for a sec. I didn't answer him. I'm in the 9,000 floor, 9,500. And there was a homie because of my last name Martinez, and there was a homie across the way, and he was Sparrow from Beakystown, and he called me over and he said, "Hey man, your name's Martinez. You're Mexican." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Where are you from?" I said, "I grew up a little bit in Inglewood. I know some fellas from the hood." And he said, "Let me see your paperwork." So I showed him, my arrest charges, and I had robbery, I had 459, I had a bunch of charges. When you first start off, it's doomsday. I mean, plus I got other petty thefts. And the guy looks at my paperwork and he says, "You know what's going to happen?" He goes, "You're going to prison, and you need now to make a decision who you're going to roll with." And I ended up rolling with them. And he got up and he went over and he talked to that black guy. I don't know the conversation that took place, but that's when I made the point. And I was part of the Southerners.
Okay. When did you get out on bond?
No, there was no bond. No, on that case there, we ended up fighting it. There was no gun that was found, and I ended up taking a deal at that time for 16 months.
Okay.
That was the first time.
How much time did you do on 15? Do you do on, what'd you say, 15 months or 16 months?
16 months. Yeah. I ended up doing 9 months on 16 months. But, back then they didn't have what was called SB 16. I think it's called SB 16. Back then you did, you tap time or, almost, because you got to go through the transition, through Central, you don't get day for day. So I did about 9 months. I got out. I re-violated after about 56 days. And when you violate out there, now they put different things in play in the 90s as far as halftime. But when you violate then, you get the whole violation. They can give you 3 months, 6 months. They can give you up to a year. So I ended up catching a couple of violations and doing the full year.
What were the violations for?
Well, they're just using or stealing or being somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. You'd get violated back then.
Okay. And so, what was prison? Was prison all right? Was it rough?
Well, yeah, it was rough, but I ended up, I think I talk about that in the California Insider edition. You learn what the rules are, the rules of engagement. You and I both know you're going to mind somebody. And if you're running with certain people, you're going to act right. And you're going to take direction. You're going to take orders. And I learned real quick being young that I learned how to take orders. Yes, sir.
So when you got out, what happened? Did you get a regular job? Everything went right? You started selling insurance? Everything?
I ended up getting out, and then I've always been good at sales as far as TO closing, stuff like that. Either working in the janitorial business, car business, or selling even copiers. So getting out only lasted for a short time, and then I ended up catching another case. I can't remember if that was a G. I ended up catching another case for burglary.
How do you catch a case if you're doing sales? How do you catch a case for burglary if you got a job doing sales? That's hard to do.
I start using again. Right. I'm a recovering addict alcoholic. I just had 5 years. I just celebrated my 5 years of sobriety a couple days ago on the 25th, man. I have 5 years clean.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, like any dope fiend, when you're in prison, just like anybody else, you got the thoughts of getting out, getting the girl, getting the job, and that's going to fix me. That you and I both know that doesn't work.
That didn't fix you. So you did get the job.
Yeah,
but you got back on drugs
Yeah.
or alcohol or some type of an addictive substance, and you ended up burglarizing some houses, or
Yeah.
one house you got caught right away?
No, I was boosted a lot in stealing commercial burglaries. They ended up accumulating, and I ended up getting arrested for that and going back to prison. I actually discharged the first number, and then I ended up catching it was a second number. It was either a K number or an N number. I think it was K number.
And so so how long did you do on this bit?
Well, it was 16.48. Think. I can't remember if it was 3. I can't remember if it was 3 or it was 4.8. I can't remember how much I did on that one. I ended up doing a few years on it. I ended up, as always, you go through reception. At that time, you were going through Chino. So I've done time at, Soledad. I've done time at CMC, CRC. I've done time at, Wasco. I've done time. I got out of Corcoran in 2015. Avenel. Yeah. I've been in quite a few prisons.
So you went in that time, got out, got another charge?
Yeah, I got out after the K number. Yeah, I ended up getting out, and I ended up getting another charge. That was the one. Yeah, I ended up getting a charge on that one. I can't remember how many years. It was a lot of years, so I ended up taking a narcotic number. California, it was a long time ago, came out with an N number. So N was a narcotics number. So you would get this deal, depending on the crime, and my crime, fell in parameters. So I took an N number, and the judge would grant it, and it was an N number. And then from that, you would go through time in a facility called CRC. It's supposed to be a rehab.
Right. Wait a second. So you got out again. You got back on drugs and started selling drugs.
No, I've never. No, I started using drugs. I was stealing from my habit. The selling drugs and selling drugs and stuff like that were kind of over with when I was a minor.
Okay, so you were using drugs.
Yes, sir.
And you got arrested. How did that happen? How did you end up getting arrested again?
I can't remember. I can tell you about the last one. If you want to talk about the last one, I mean,
sure.
Yeah. The last one, I was strung out again. I was doing crack, and at that time, the methamphetamine, the crystal. And I was out in the valley, and I was hitting different stores and hitting dealers, and eventually I ended up.
When you say hitting, what does that mean? You're robbing them?
Well, yeah, I've robbed people in my past. Yeah, hitting stores means I was boosting from them, stealing from them. I'm sorry.
All right, so you're boosting from, so you're stealing from some stores, and you're robbing drug dealers.
Or getting stuff from drug dealers. Yeah, when you start using, you find other people to be a part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was part. Drug. Yeah. So
right.
the last one was 2011, and is 2010. I ended up stealing from a store in La Crescenta, and when I left the store, the highway patrolman put the lights on me, and I went into pursuit. And when I went into pursuit, I went into a neighborhood. I got out of the car. I ended up hiding out in a laundry room, and there was helicopters. They had me down as armed and dangerous because, whatever was in my file from the past. And they were looking for me for about 6 hours, door-to-door search, and I ended up making the LA Times on that one. Yeah. I ended up, after the helicopters went away, I ended up leaving the location where I was at and stole a bicycle from the area next door, and I got away. So they were already looking for me. And then once I got away from that, I ended up back in the valley, and I stayed somewhere. I sold the bike I had, and then I ended up stealing a car, Grand Theft Auto. I stole a car, and then I was doing the same things. And then I ended up in Burbank at a mall location. And then when I came out of the location, they hit the lights on me too. And that ended up in a high-speed pursuit too, where it didn't last too long. They had me blocked off, and they ended up getting me in North Hollywood. So I ended up on that one. I ended up getting 7 years, 8 months with 80%.
Okay.
Yeah.
7 years, 8 months. You did 80% of that time. So what, 5 years?
Yeah, a little over 4 years. Yeah, I did that. I did the time in Corcoran. Yes, sir. Yeah. So I got out in 2000. I got out in 2015. Right. Got out in 2015, stayed sober. relapsed, ended up relapsing and using. Parole wasn't that stringent. They'd try to help you. And then I made a decision. And after that number dropped, during while that number dropped, I ended up in LA and I ended up getting myself into a program.
Okay. What were you doing for work?
I was stealing.
Okay. Well,
Yeah. See, yeah.
During this time, were you ever married? Kids?
Yeah, I was married. I was married in 2000, probably 2006. 2004, I was with somebody and I had a son, and I was in Vegas. I had a janitorial business in Vegas, and I ended up using that, and I ended up losing everything on that as well. And my wife ended up divorcing me, and her and my son they live in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got out recently, 2015, you relapsed, you jumped back on the wagon, and now you're doing what?
Well, I got sober on July 25th, 2018, and I ended up going into a program. When I got out of the program, I came back to Ventura County, and law enforcement didn't recognize me. And you're Lang, and how come you Lang? Why are you Dipper left? Living with the homeless population out there as well. And they used to come to the office and they would ask me how I did it. And I was working I ended up owning that business. I was working for a gentleman and he was getting upset. I was working for a place right across the street to where I was homeless. It was called Plaza Park. So what happened is at that time, I have a pastor, Pastor Gill. He met with me and we were standing in front of the business and he said, Lang, why don't you look across the street? And I looked across the street and there was about 50 homeless in the park. And he said, I want you to look, Lang. And I said, okay. And he said, that's your calling. So I ended up speaking to city officials, showing up at meetings. I was in the first documentary, Humanizing the Homelessness in Oxnard, and there was a panel. I was with officials. First article, I think, went out. It was the first article ever released in the newspapers about a homeless individual. It's called Being Homeless in Oxnard Park. Yeah, nobody knows what me being homeless in Plaza Park. And then there was other articles going out. And then I ended up getting caught up with officials and in regards to homeless encampments, going out and doing outreach. And then it just went from there. I ended up being in quite a few publications. And there was another interview with me. It was called The Plight of a Homeless Man. That was one of the first articles with the interview to go out in Ventura. And then I was eventually in other publications, Keys to Recovery magazine. I was in a few of their editions. I was in their anniversary edition, the 5-year anniversary edition. They had a celebration where they were giving an award to Danny Trejo, the actor. And then I've been in quite a few articles. I think 30 something, or yeah. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, you're running that business today?
The credit business?
Yeah.
No. The credit business is called 123 Credit Fix. I ended up owning the same credit business. What happened is the credit business right now, we're not doing it. I had a situation that came up a couple of years ago, and being caught up with city officials and politics, I had something happen to me December 10th a couple of years ago, and I was arrested for something I didn't do, and they had gun charges on me, home invasion, and I was arrested. In fact, I was in the Ventura County Star newspaper on the 5th of that December. 10th, I was arrested. I was supposed to speak in regards to the longest day, in regards to homeless individuals that passed away. And we ended up bailing me out on December 28th. And May 4th, that made the newspapers too, not in a good way. They had me on Newsbreak, homeless advocate, blah, blah, blah. And then May 4th, judge, it's in the article, Homeless Advocate Seeks Redemption. The judge went to the DA and said, we're not going to charge him. And they said, pursuant 1385 point something PC, in the interest of justice, we're vacating all charges against Lang Martinez. So I had the credit business. What happened is the media went off at that time. So we left. and I ended up going to the Valley, and I was in the Valley. We ended up getting me an apartment in the Valley, and we wanted things to calm down when the charges were dropped. That was on May 4th, and then finally it hit the Google. All charges were dismissed against Lang Martinez, and then we did it carefully, and then there was an article. The same place I was arrested, in Fillmore, we wanted the article to go out in Fillmore. So the article of Homeless Advocate Seeks Redemption went out in the Fillmore Gazette, and that was me being interviewed by Mark Alvarado, who used to work for the city of Oxnard, kind of explained my journey. And to go back a little bit in regards to the crime of 2011, my people were able to reach out to Center Weekly and LA Times, and they interviewed me. And there was an article that went out to an apology to the community. The program talks about making an amends. So there was an article put out where it was a true article, and where I wanted to apologize for my actions, and I also wanted to say that I didn't make excuses for what I did. So yeah, I've been involved in a lot, man.
All right. What do you do for a living now? What are you doing now?
Right now, I work for a gentleman. He has a location that it houses quite a few individuals in Oxnard, and I help him right now. I also
Like a shelter? You work for a homeless shelter?
it's not a homeless shelter. So a homeless shelter is something completely different than a place where people are accountable. So I work for a place. It's like a sober living type of place, and he's a gentleman that owns a real estate company. He has his own franchise. Right. And then I get paid for other stuff, whether I do speaking or, as far as honorarium, stuff like that. I just got done doing what was the last two articles, because of the homeless situation everywhere. I wrote an article. It first went out in the VC Reporter. It was called Transparency and the Millions of Dollars Being Spent. And then I wrote another article that went into Montecito Journal, and that was called Vagrancy versus Homelessness and the Millions of Dollars Being Spent. And then, and then after that, I ended up doing California Insider, and that's with Epic Times Media Group. And I did that interview a few months ago.
All right.
So that's about it. So, I'm an advocate. I speaker, I'm very blessed to be on your show. I was asked yesterday if I would speak for a group called Active Faith Organization. That'll be coming up on August 12th. And then I think next week I'll be going to either Modesto or Fresno. Oh, it's called KD Media. Lance, can't remember his last name. He has a podcast like you called Breaking Down Doors, or I can't remember. Now I think I'll be on that next week.
Okay. Well, do you feel like there's anything else you want to discuss?
Well, no. I mean, I think where you've been, and most of your guests on your shows. I mean, the biggest discussion right now is the awareness and about the children. The movie just came out. Sound of Freedom, and it's real. It's real. There's untold stories. There is Hollywood. I was there. People don't want to talk about it, but it's real. Adults indulging themselves with minors is real. I'd like to say, when we go back to the Odyssey and stories that aren't told, when I talk to somebody in the media, I say, we got individuals. Yeah, they lost their lives. But we have thousands of lives that were destroyed. We have thousands of lives that were destroyed by individuals that took advantage of our innocence, and we call them pedophiles, we call them perpetrators, chicken hawks, whatever name we want to put on. The bottom line is these individuals that are doing these things to kids, they're monsters. Man, they're monsters. They have no right to do what they do. I'm very blessed to be a part of Children of the Night. Chill of the Night's an organization out here in the Valley, Dr. Lois Lee. And what she does is they go out, and they've been doing it since 79, and they've been rescuing runaways and prostitutes off the streets. Dr. Lee has an organization. Dr. Lee was also at the Odyssey, and in fact, she was out there pulling children out of the Odyssey. And she tells me when we talk sometimes, she says, Lang, no, I can still see their faces. And I said, I don't know, what do you mean, Dr. Lee? She said a lot of those children ended up with AIDS. And I was there when they passed away. She was there, so I'm involved with NASCA, National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. So I'm trying to do a lot of things like, what you do is trying to give back. Is I want to give back for the life that I have today. I'm no longer that person that I used to be. I'm just trying to do the right thing one day at a time, Matt.
Hey, do me a favor. If you like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Please consider joining my Patreon. It's only $10 a month. That's really nothing, honestly. Leave me a comment in the comment section, and we will put the links for Lang's social media or in any type of the advocacy groups that he works for in the description box. And I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. See ya.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I am here with Alex Rosen, and he is very much like he runs a channel on Rumble that is very similar to the show that Chris Hansen used to do, which is, which was a hugely popular, and it's basically he's exposing guys or people, I guess, in general that do inappropriate things or attempt or say, listen, but just watch the video. It'll be all right. It's worth watching. So I had a guy who mentioned in the comment section, hey, because people will watch this and they'll say, well, this isn't his tip. Although this is still crime related. It's crime related, definitely.
Right.
But a guy said, hey, you have to check out this guy. And he gave me your name and your channel and said, you have to check him out. He's in Florida right now. And I was like, okay, and I didn't know who you were. He explained who you were and what you did. So I screenshotted it. I sent it to my booking manager, and it was either the same day or the next day. He goes, I got the guy. I talked to him. He's in Florida. He can be there either today or tomorrow. And I was like, wow. And then we talked, and then that was yesterday, and then you're here today. And I actually moved some stuff around, and so yeah, it's interesting too, because even then I was like what's, I don't understand, who is this? So he sent me the video, and I watched the video of the rental truck video, and the guy had driven several states over.
Yeah, I drove from Ohio all the way into Pennsylvania. It was only an hour, but crossing state lines, renting a van to do it. I mean,
right.
That's pretty insane.
To meet. I mean, can I say it was basically to meet a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old to meet them to anyway to see what happened. So but the way you I've seen these kinds of videos, and the guys get out and they're super aggressive, and they're super condescending. Like a Hansen would go in, and as soon as he walked in the room, he was so condescending. The guys shut down right away. But you walked up, said all the appropriate things, said, "Hey, let's go ahead and talk outside." You were so non-judgmental that guy just started spewing out everything. And I noticed after a while he kind of started backpedaling.
Yeah,
he started realizing this isn't I'm saying the wrong things here, and but by then it was just way too late. And I mean, it was just, I even mentioned to Connor, I said, I hope this guy has a sense of humor about this. Not that it's a funny subject, because people get nuts over it, but it's just the absurdity that these guys and the lengths that they go to, and it's just they're so oblivious to what's happening, what they're doing, that it's wrong. Yeah, it's insane. So how did you get into this? I'm sorry.
So basically, I started doing this at 19 years old. I'm 22 years old now. I know you see the hairline and everything, but you got to understand, dealing with these people for 3 years, seeing all these, pictures sent online that I'm not going to say here because, I care about your channel and stuff like that. Right. But, seeing all of that stuff, I mean, then having a bald dad, it makes me look way older at 22. You know what I mean? But so anyway, I've always wanted to be a police officer. I'm from Houston, Texas. I still live there, sadly. And, so I was playing college football my freshman year at Texas Southern University. And we had 3 weeks off for summer. Like, we just finished like spring ball. So we have like 3 weeks off. And, I was going to bed like at 10 p.m. every single night, waking up at like 5 to go do the morning workouts and whatnot. And, so I just break all of that for the 3 weeks of summer. I'm like, oh, finally, I'm going to eat some ice cream now. I'm going to, I'm still doing it sadly now, but like, gonna just break this, go to sleep at 6 a.m. So I got into like these videos and, I was like, this looks really fun to do. This is interesting. I'm like, I got nothing else to do. Like, because, I see the Hansons, see all this. I'm like, there's no way there's so many people going to do it. I'm like, I can't even conceive, like, even, I was at the time 19 years old. I'm like, I can't even go meet like a 15, 14, 16-year-old. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even comprehend this. But, so I was like, let's see how fast this actually happens. So I just throw up a picture on Grindr. It's a gay dating app. And within 30 minutes, somebody wanted to go meet who they thought was a 15-year-old boy. I was like, no way this is this common. And just those 3 weeks, I just kept doing it over and over and over again. And it was just so easy to get these people. And, it was very fun at first. I always wanted to get the bad guys, and I couldn't be a cop yet. I think I was just going to do 2 years of college and go be a police officer, but, it wasn't set in stone yet. And, it just kind of led to where we are now. Like, it started to get so bad. Like, there's one catch that's on Rumble now, where we confronted this guy working at an ice cream shop. And his coworkers were defending him. And I'm like, okay, this is a serious issue. And that's kind of what turned on the passion switch. It was like maybe the 10th catch. And then from there, there was a time like in 2020, I'm like, okay, we're going after 15, 14-year-olds. Let's see how deep this really goes. And now the past trip that we just did, we caught 2 people that were into infants and dogs, and they were both arrested. It's a very deep rabbit hole with these people.
So you contact the authorities, like when you're on your way to meet them, you guys call the authorities and say, look, this is what's going on. We need an officer. Or do you do it like as you're talking to these guys and you're wrapping up? Do you guys then call, or like how does that work?
It's kind of a combination. So, for example, the guy that was into infants and dogs in Arizona, we called the cops midway through, because typically what I like to do is, we have the messages always set in stone. Then we have, hopefully, which happens a lot, them confessing on camera to what they want to do voluntarily. Like, we don't say, do this or else I'm going to do this. And, so we have all that. Then I tell one of the people, go order the fried pickles. And fried pickles is code word for...
I knew something was up.
Fried
knew
pickles
it when I
are code
saw
word
that.
for cops. I don't know how many criminals watch this channel, but ignore what I just said if you're watching and you're a criminal.
Because at one point you said, hey, can you go ahead and get the fried pickles? Because I come here. I always get them when I come. And I thought, that seems odd that out of nowhere he just said that. Like, that's got to be code
I know.
word.
Like, I'm not like that fat to where I'm ordering like actual food like mid-catch. I mean, I'm getting there, but not yet. And, so then with the guy in New Mexico, the decoy reached out to the sheriff's office beforehand, and they were willing to technically not work with us, but they were willing to be aware of what we did.
Right.
And, they just happened to be watching the stream as we were doing it. And, when I ordered the food, they just happened to be around the corner and go arrest the guy. So,
Well, man, I don't even know where to begin. Like the guy, I was going to say the one yesterday, he just started to spill everything. Just started very, but the thing is, first of all, you're a big guy. So it's not hard for you to move the guy to, and you just said, hey, let's talk out here. I mean, the guy's like looking up at you. So he's like, okay. So he immediately bolts out the back and you're standing there. But you were also, like I said, you were non-confrontational, like I can't see where he would say, oh, I felt uncomfortable or anything like that, because you were so just, appreciative of him moving out there, talking to you, having a conversation. And multiple times you were like, Oh yeah. No, I don't think that's so weird at all. No, that's fine. No. You seem like a nice guy. And you were very, and you're pulling out the transcripts of the phone, of the text conversations, and you're like, well, here you say this and this. I mean, you seem very respectful, and you were going on and you were making him feel comfortable. And the more comfortable he felt, obviously, the more he talked.
Yep.
But God, the stuff he was saying.
I know. I mean, he was absolutely one of the worst. I mean, he worked at a daycare, and
Right.
that's for one reason only.
And he rented the van.
He rented the van.
Bro, what? As soon as I saw the van, I said, well, there's no reason for like a 45-year-old man to go meet a couple of young individuals with a van. Like that immediately makes me think serial killer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that he said he's been caught before by cops doing this, and they didn't press charges.
They dropped the charges.
I don't understand. So that's crazy. Like, especially when it comes to something, because with you, you got arrested for fraud. That's fixable. You know what I mean? You're not genetically a fraudster, but I think these people are genetically, the way they are. I would just say, and when they show you that the first time, like, believe it. Like, there's no, like, I guess even with something like, say I go ahead and how do I say it? Just rope somebody, add a G to the beginning of that word,
Right.
just grab their butt, but they're my age.
Right.
I can I can fix that. I can just not do that again. But I think with them, when they're going to try to meet, younger ladies under 18 off the internet, I don't think that's fixable. I think in their head, they just have to do that. That's just how they are.
So when I went to prison, obviously, I told you that I was, I was held in like a marshal's holdover for like a year. Then I was sentenced. Then I did 3 years in a medium security prison. Well, so there's not a lot of offenders there like this,
Right.
Because they'll hurt them. They don't do well.
Right.
They basically have to stay in the unit. They don't go in the rec yard. When they go to chow to eat, like they literally, when they call last call, and basically the chow hall's empty, these guys, there might be 10 out of 1,800 guys. And they'll immediately rush out of the unit, go straight through the line, grab their food, eat as quick as possible, go back to the unit, because they have a unit that there at Coleman. They had a unit that was specifically for people that had mental problems, and they would stay in that unit. And like guys that are schizophrenic or have epilepsy or different issues. So, but at the low, 50% of the inmates out of 1,800 inmates at the low security prison, 1,500 were either there for that specific charge for looking at pictures. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them in federal are looking for pictures. Mm-hmm. Typically, they're not. We used to call them hands-on. They're not hands-on.
Right.
Hands-on typically end up in the state. It's a state crime.
Right.
If you're looking at things on the internet, the feds get involved.
Right.
So most of these guys looked at stuff on the internet. Now, some of them had actually videoed things, and they actually were a part of creating,
rings.
Yeah. Like for instance, there was at one point, there had been like a bust of, God, honestly, there was probably 1,000, maybe even more, of guys that were paying like $400 or $500 a month to be a part of a website where a father was doing things to his daughter since she was like the age of like 9, and he'd been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. Eventually, a guy got caught for something else, and he told the authorities, "Listen, I can help you with something. This is what's going on. I'm a member of this site, and the site's huge." And so they go in and they get all of these guys like IPO addresses. They IPO? What?
IP
addresses?
Yeah.
What am I saying? Okay, their IP addresses, they track them all down. They set up stings. They arrest hundreds of them.
Nice.
We ended up getting we probably had 30 of the same guys on the same case. Like, they don't know each other, but they're all in the same case. And so that's extremely, like, to me, it's like you're looking at a picture, an underage person, a picture of them. Like, okay, you didn't really do anything. Like, I get it. You're a sicko. You're a pervert. You need counseling. I don't know if you need prison, but whatever. I don't make the rules. But you're a member of a site where some guy is doing something. Like you're promoting that.
Right. It,
You're
like
paying.
Yeah, it fuels the market for it, and I think they're indirectly doing it. I mean, the same way that these OnlyFans people get this affirmation because all these simps are like, promoting them. It's the same way. Like without all these people paying for it, would the abuse still happen? Maybe, but would it be? I mean, it wouldn't be distributed like it is, and it wouldn't. It wouldn't get to a point where the dad's doing it for like a profit, and he wants to like do it more and more and more.
Hundreds of guys, maybe even thousands of people are paying. And this is the thing too. This is what killed me when somebody had told me about it. Like, hey, bro, like we got like 30 of these guys from this one. I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, they've been coming in over the last 2-3 weeks because they all get sentenced at different times and moved. So over the last 2-3 weeks, they're like that guy. I'm like, oh wow, that okay. And I remember saying, well, I mean, and they were saying, yeah, those guys are like contributing to this crime. And I remember saying, I said, well, I mean, what would someone pay for that anyway? And they were like, the guy, and they told the exact figure. And I remember thinking, that's a car payment. Like you're making a car payment to be a part of this site. And one of the guys was a principal of a school. A lot of these guys put themselves in a position to be around young adults, right?
Yeah.
Or I want to say young adult,
Younger ladies under 18.
Yes.
Yeah, like, I mean, the daycare worker, the video that we posted 2 videos before that guy, he went out, I mean, he has no job, he didn't do anything, he's on welfare, but he made sure that he gets to babysit his friends' kids. Like the one time he leaves his house, he's doing it to babysit his friends' kids. Like when we confronted him, he was in his pajamas, like at 6:30 p.m., but he'll get dressed and suddenly want to be social to go do that. And, it's not a coincidence. Like apparently at the daycare, the guy's only been working there for a couple weeks because he just was homeless. He, got his life back on, temporarily back on track. And so luckily he was supervised by like the other woman there because he couldn't be alone with the kids yet. But I think it was only a matter of time. And yeah. I'm glad he decided to go do this. Actually, I'm glad he decided to go do it because we all know how he was because he's been caught before. He has that attraction. So I'm glad he slipped up again and they got exposed for it.
A lot of these guys, like they'll get time, they get out. So first of all, it's funny because in Florida, they used to not let them go to halfway houses, right? And that's a big, I mean, I know you haven't been locked up, but like you go to prison for 5 years, you've lost everything.
Right.
And you need to go to a halfway house. For 6 months or so you get a job, you save some money. Like if they just dropped you off at the corner, like where am I going?
Right.
Oh, your friends and family. Well, what if you don't have friends and family? If you're a criminal, there's a good chance that they've turned their back on you. If you're one of these guys, they're done with them.
Oh yeah.
Like almost always. And then Florida used to, really only about a year ago, they started letting them go to halfway houses again. It was like 10 or 15 years where one had gone to a halfway house, committed a crime in the halfway house. They said, we're done with these guys. And they cut them off. But they just started letting them go again to, get back on their feet. But then they can't. It's hard for them to find some place to live. They're all terrified of what's going to happen when they get out. They do not have an easy time in Coleman. In prison. In Coleman, they had an easier time than most prisons at the low that I was at because it almost caters to them, but they're bullied, they're pushed around, they're told they can't watch TV, you can't come in the TV room, you can't. It's rough, and then they get out. Of course, they have to start their whole lives over again. So so there's a lot more stress on them, and I'm telling you right now, a lot of them do come back. There were some guys that had been in state prison once or twice and were now in federal prison for 10 years. Listen, it took me one time to go to prison.
Right.
I'm not going back, But you're right. There's something, they're wired wrong. And the other thing is now they have something called it's a public safety factor where they make them go take a course. And if they don't pass the course, then they won't release them. Like they can permanently keep them in prison, supposedly. That's a law, but I don't know if they've done it yet. The other thing is when these guys get out and they're on probation, they make them take a lie detector. They're typically not allowed on social media. They're on them.
They're supposed to be on him.
Law enforcement often questions him, not because he's suspected of a crime, but because they find him fascinating. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't typically commit crime, but when I do, it's bank fraud. Stay greedy, my friends.
Support the channel. Join Matthew Cox's Patreon.
The amount of
offenders.
Yes, the amount of offenders that we've caught. Gosh, I'd say probably like 10 to 15% of the people we catch are offenders. Like the guy in New Mexico, I mean, he was facing charges for, viewing his phone the wrong way, and
Yeah.
And from what I understand, he faked his death. Carlsbad, New Mexico PD thought he was dead, and because we showed his face to the detective beforehand, and he's like,
he's dead.
I thought that guy was dead. You sure it's this guy? And so
I have a video.
Yeah. So then so it turns out he's living in his parents' shed. And he has a VPN to show he's in like in a city like 30 miles north. And he ends up going to meet, like he was originally supposed to meet a 13-year-old, a 13-year-old. And he ditched that to go meet who I was posing as. I was posing as a mom of 3 kids, 7, 2, and 1. And he just stopped talking to the 13-year-old, went to go to them instead. And then when we go meet him, he wants to go meet at a church. And he's like, I'm over here. Like we were supposed to pick him up and take him to the house. But then he just confesses to wanting to, he had a line. He said he wasn't going to do anything to the 1-year-old, but the 2-year-old, that was fair game to him. I mean, this is genuinely how he thought. And he just admitted to watching 20 years worth of illegal stuff on his phone. And then the cops came about 30, 40 minutes later. They were watching the stream and ID'd him. And, well, he wasn't dead. And now he's in jail in Eddy County, New Mexico jail for the moment.
So do you sometimes have to go, like once they grab these guys, do you sometimes have to go and testify at like a trial? Like do they go to trial?
Very rarely. Not rarely because they don't get charged. Rarely because, they're on video saying what they're going to do, then all the messages. So, they'd be dumb to not take a plea deal. But there's one person that did, in fact, go to trial that I actually had to go, supposed to testify this morning at a preliminary hearing, but they waived it last minute. I was going to do it over Zoom for a guy in Pennsylvania. But there is a guy that went to trial. His name is Jeffrey. God, I don't even know how to say his last name, but it's a really weird name to pronounce. I think Wanninger or something, and he's in Iowa. And so the trial wasn't specifically for the charge of trying to solicit one of our decoys. It was for a chomo charge. And the reason why I had to testify in that is because on the video, he admitted to me to, having a relationship with his stepdaughter. And so they played that part in court. He pleaded not guilty to it, despite confessing to the detective, confessing to me, having the messages saying he did it. And he got sentenced November 7th to 35 years in prison.
In state?
In state, yeah. And that's not all. Then he's also now in Polk County jail because he got convicted in Madison County. He's in Polk County, Iowa jail now. He's awaiting trial for now our video of soliciting the decoy. So he's going to jail for the rest of his life, luckily.
Jeez, I can't imagine going to a state facility with that charge. It would be horrible.
There's like 2 people in Iowa, so he might be okay, but probably not. They'll punch him out, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's not gonna be hard. It's not gonna be easy.
No.
It's gonna be some hard time. I was trying to think, what are the other things that? I'm trying to think of all the different things that they're trying to do to curb the behavior and curb, they can give them shots. They can do. There's all kinds of stuff that the federal government tries to do. They monitor the hell out of them. But I don't know. I don't know what stops it.
I think I just think that there's just myth in society that everybody's equal and deserves a fair shot. I think that's BS. I don't think everybody's equal. I think those people are. I think those people are just. I'm sorry. Some people are just born messed up. And, I think this has to do with, in a way, kind of how politically correct we're getting. Like, oh, it's okay. They just need help. They just need help. No, there's no helping these people. They're like the Energizer Bunny. They're going to keep going. They're going to keep moving their legs to what they want to do. You can put a roadblock in front of them. Okay, you remove 5 years of prison. They're going to keep doing it, keep doing it. There's no stopping these people. Like, there's no... Like, okay, so I got arrested in 2019 for DWI, and I was on the wrong side of the road. It was dark as heck, and I was in the country, so I didn't know what side of the road I was on. But, I did 6 hours in jail, and that's enough for me to, like, really make sure, like, okay, this is that, don't do it. And, I ended up getting dismissed because I had nothing in my system. But, that's enough for me to, like, curb me. Like, that's a 6 hours to me is a wake-up call. And for a lot of these people, we caught a guy in Ohio. He did 20 years for... making his daughter's belly big via,
Right.
And he did 20 years for it.
Right.
He's literally got out like a couple years ago, and he's trying to go talk to an 11-year-old, and he confessed to it. He even sent over an illicit image to who he believed to be this younger lady under 18, and he just went right back into jail. He just told the detective after it happened, and next thing you know, just a week later, we just see him on the list as like in jail.
So I have a slightly different, because I was in a prison where like half of these guys either they had either those specific charges or those charges in their past. Like, you might be here on a completely different charge, but
right.
in your past you had a charge. So you can't send those guys to just anywhere. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that happens when you get to prison is they want to see your paperwork.
Right.
So it's going to be listed in your paperwork. They're not going to be okay with that. So, but I spent a considerable amount of time in a prison with these guys, and clearly there's something not right. You can look at them and tell, something. We actually had him kind of categorized, like he's a sleeper, he's a sloth, he's emotional. Was it stunted? Emotionally underdeveloped. So I forget what it was, but what, and I don't know the exact statistic. I'd love to know what the exact statistic, but I remember having a conversation where a guy had said, well, you have to understand that like 70 or 80% of these guys were, or claimed to be, have been taken advantage of when they were kids. And as a result of that, it stunted them in some way. And now they connect, those acts with the age that they were taken advantage of or close to it. And I remember the guy said that. He's like, so, it's kind of messed up. And I went, and I get that. And in that way, they're victims. Like, I feel for you.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel for you that this guy went through that. But that created a monster. And we can't, and as unfair as it is, you can't let monsters roam society. So do I feel for you? I feel for your plight. I feel for what happened to you. It's unreasonable. It's not right. But it happens to lots of people that don't turn into this.
Absolutely.
So I feel for you, but you can't walk around society.
That's always like an excuse that I give them to like kind of confess to stuff, because like I'm like I try to always fit in. Did anything happen to you when you were younger? And if they say yes, I'm like, oh, okay. So now I understand why this is happening. You weren't born like this. You were created. This is unfair what happened to you. So you are here to do it. It's like, yes, but I know.
Give them an out.
Yeah, give them an out. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Regardless of what happened, like, okay, if I get robbed, am I going to go rob somebody now? I don't know. I guess you can't compare that to like an SEX crime, but like, and if that's the case, like if that's a valid excuse, how come the women that get victimized, how come they don't go do it?
Right.
All the women it happens to them and they become extra against it. And maybe there's some innate difference when it happens.
Some people are more susceptible to, and
right.
that's horrible. That's
right.
a horrible thing. But once again, it's like, sorry, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's like saying I was born poor, and everybody I know is a drug dealer, and so I sell drugs. Well, I understand that's certainly a contributor, but there's lots of people in your neighborhood that have regular jobs.
Right.
They were born poor. Their parents were drug dealers. Their parents were in and out of prison. Like, that's an excuse. In a way, it's an excuse. Like, I get it. It is a contributing factor, but it doesn't happen to everybody. Not everybody lets that take over their lives and make that.
Yeah, because in the end, it has to be in your mind. You have to be capable of doing it. Like, no matter how many times some things can be shoved in my face or whatever, some things I'm just going to always be adverse to. Right. And obviously, they were still born in a way to where they're not adverse to that. Like their minds or their genetics are still, or their mind is still created in a way that they're capable of doing that if something happens to them or whatever. And there was one guy that we caught. Gosh, I really feel for this guy. Sadly, he had so many people that he did this to, and he was obviously like very messed up. Like you can see this video on Rumble. It's like an ordained minister that we caught, and his wife is 23 or 24 years old now. Met her when she was 10 years old online when he was 36, and she's very emotionally stunted. He would like solicit, NUDES from her as a kid. He told me that he still had a folder of her pictures from when she was like 11 and 12 on his phone. And, he said what happened to him is that satanic ritual abuse happened to him when he was between 2 and 5 years old. And it stinks. I mean, I believe it happened to him. I believe that's a very real thing. I mean, look at Balenciaga, I think all that stuff's real. But still, I mean, he knows how bad it is. He knows how much it messed him up. And now when he called his wife on the phone, she was in the hospital for like mental issues now. Because of course she is. And he like just talked, hey baby, this and that. And he had diapers like around the house because he likes to do age play. He likes to put her in diapers and do all this stuff to her. I mean, he's just so screwed up. And, got to the point where, I'm sad for him, but I don't care what happens to him now. I mean, there's no excuse for these people. Like, I mean, to everybody, do not take sympathy with these people. They are so sick.
So how long do you plan on continuing to do this?
Well, I mean,
Are you going to be a cop? I mean,
I want to.
Right.
I want to, but I take things day by day. Like, I don't really. I always, in some capacity, I always want to be in a position where I can get, bad people that do this type of stuff off the streets,
right,
and go save children. Whether that's going to run for office one day or be a police officer, I want to do this in some capacity or continuing to do this. But I mean, my immediate plans.
Yeah.
As for, I like glitched out for a sec. For now, until I settle down with my girlfriend and we have like beautiful babies together, I'm going to keep doing this. And hopefully, when we settle down somewhere, I'm going to go be a police officer in whatever area. But
so basically you have a Rumble channel. How long have you had the Rumble channel?
I've had the Rumble channel for a couple months now.
Is it working out as well as the other platform?
Yeah, well,
better or
no, not yet. I mean, I have some favorite channels that I like to watch on many platforms, but yeah, I mean, the Rumble's doing pretty all right. It's good.
Okay. So there's no issues?
No.
Oh, okay,
no
okay.
issues. Yeah.
Well, because I was thinking about doing a Rumble channel, like moving some stuff. I have a ton of content at this point, like starting a channel and moving it over there. So do you ever watch? It's Puggy Pug or?
Yeah, if you want to see some awesome videos, definitely go watch Puggy Pug on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, just some very, 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 very weird stuff on that channel. I would recommend to go check it out, and also go check out PP Southeast Texas. Those are just my personal favorite channels to go watch if you want to see this type of content and these people getting confronted. But yeah, those are just my personal favorite channels. Those are the only two I'm going to plug because I just like them so much better than every other channel. Right. So yeah.
So is there a lot of editing in the videos? Because I noticed. There were parts that were cut out. Like it was that one video was like 45 minutes.
Right.
How much was trimmed down, or was it just in its entirety?
Well, we don't really trim anything down per se. I mean, we do. So basically, we live stream the catches too. So the live stream's going continuous. It's privated on. It's just private on whatever platform we're using, and so. As for the camera stuff, like basically if the cops are just kind of talking to him and it's like 20 minutes at this point, we're like, okay, just cut the camera off. The live stream's going. The cops have their cameras going. We just want to make sure everything's documented by either us or the cops.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there there were jump cuts in the video, but nothing that we said to him was cut out. You know what I mean? So, it cut to where the cops were talking to him, whatever. Then they end up like letting him go. They say, we got to go. The decoy in Illinois has to go up to Pennsylvania to give his phone to them. I don't understand why they're doing that, but whatever. And then I just pull Angel aside. That's the guy's name. And I got the daycare he works at because I'm like, okay, well, if him getting a van and crossing state lines isn't enough to go arrest him on the spot after admitting to wanting to do stuff with very, very young ladies under 18, then whatever. At least I'm going to get his daycare and make sure he's away from them. And, I ended up calling the daycare a couple days ago, and he's gone. So
I don't even. Okay, I don't know. What else do you want to cover? Anything else, or? So first, I have a question. Are you like living out of hotels?
No.
Oh, okay.
I got an apartment. It's so dirty. That's all my fault though. Right. But like, and a good excuse, like I tell everybody, and I tell them, because when my girlfriend moves in, she's cleaning that, you know what I'm saying? But good excuse I tell everybody is I keep it dirty on purpose so I can keep working and just doing this across the country. Totally has nothing to do with me being lazy and a slob at all. It's because I'm so motivated to go do this that I never stay in there.
Well, because like right now you're leaving here to go to another state.
Right,
like you're not. It's not like you're not even going in Florida. You're like, as soon as you leave here. Like you've got to leave by a certain time. You're getting in your car. You're driving for 4 or 5 hours or 6 hours. I don't know how long it is.
7, yeah.
7 hours to grab somebody that's already prepared to be someplace, and then you were like, what was it? A couple days ago, you were somewhere else. Like,
yeah.
I mean, how often are you grabbing?
Gosh,
these guys are
trying to think. So, I mean, let's take November. So November, the 2nd to the 12th, I was gone. Then the 19th to the 22nd, and then past. So I guess like half the month I'm probably gone.
No, I'm saying half. How often are you grabbing people? Like
once like half the month. Yeah.
So like, I'm saying, is that 4 people? Is that 3? Is it? 10?
Oh yeah, like literally, like probably this month we've caught probably around like 12 to 15.
And it's you, and it's so. Are you actually like texting, or is this you have a crew or some other guys that are actually doing the?
It's a combination. So we probably have like four to 5 people that are just kind of texting. That's their main thing. But I mean, I'm logged into almost all the accounts, and I'm like doing it too. And then when it comes to like meeting time, like I'm the one in the area that knows exactly when I'm going to be there, so I take that over then. But I mean, the guy that. Gosh, for example, the guy in Arizona that was into doggies and infants, I mean, the texting to him, I probably did 90% of it. And then, of course, the actual decoy did the video call with him.
Do these guys ever bolt? Like, do you ever walk up and say, hey, so what's going on? And they go, done, and just take off?
Yeah, if they were smart, that's what they would do. Like, sometimes the whole, like, hey, man, I just got to talk to you. Sometimes they're like, I don't see your badge. You're wearing, like, a freaking Walmart t-shirt. Like, I'm just getting the heck out of here, But, yeah, but no, most of the time they stay because, their first thing is like, I got to explain myself. Like, I guess it's like their natural instinct.
Yeah, I think they're trying to explain the situation. Oh, if I explain it correctly, he'll understand. He'll cut me a break. Like, what are you going to say?
Yeah. If I just tell him that I'm not really here for what I was saying the past 3 months I was going to do. Like,
right.
And, it's great. But, my advice to them, just trying to make it fair here, my advice to them would probably be to run away from me. But let's hope they don't watch this. So,
has anybody ever gotten violent? Anybody ever? Because I thought I saw one video where the guy was yelling at you.
Yes, we've definitely had some hostile people. The only one that actually got physical was an individual named Lorenzo, which is on the Rumble channel. He was one of the first ones in 2019. He was just insane. Like, he wasn't like physically imposing or anything, but he was like so pompous about being caught. Like he tried to hit the camera, but he ended up like scratching the cameraman, like just barely like this. I mean, I'm just very glad that like the only guy that got violent was like a 20-year-old effeminate twink. I'm glad it wasn't like somebody that did like 20 years in the pen. And,
right. Well, I mean, you're a big guy.
Yeah.
What you're like, what, 6'4"? 6'4"?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're that's massive. I mean, to me, especially to me, I'm tiny. So you're massive. Yeah, I don't see anybody getting it just kills me, like when I would watch the TV shows. And listen, here's what's funny is in prison, guys would go and watch, keep in mind what half the people there were there for. guys would go and they would get 20 guys would get around and they'd watch the TV show and they would let's just like, laugh and just, or shake their heads and, and then, these guys are all there and they know what they're watching. It's this super uncomfortable situation. And every time, like I would sit there and I'd see them go and they'd sit down. They'd sit down and I'd go, oh my God, why is he sitting down? Or some guys would get up and run and then the cops would pounce on them.
Right.
So I was just wondering if anybody ever took off.
Yeah, quite a few. I wouldn't say quite a few, but very rarely they do. Like we got a guy in his truck the other day, and I'm like, "Hey Terry," he's like, "That's not even my name." Then he just so it is what it is.
What do you try and follow them or?
I used to kind of do that, but then I realized, like when I was like 19, I engaged in say more risk-taking behaviors in my car then, but. Yeah, now it's like, okay, well, there's always the next one. We got his license plate. Let's just go from there.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, you've got so many. Like there's another guy in 2 days. There's another one in 4 days. There's another like at that point, you don't even have to, you don't even have to pursue anybody because you've got so. It sounds to me like you've got so many people that are throwing lines out there all the time.
Yep. Last time I counted how many people we were talking to was like 80.
And as many. What's so messed up is as many times as you throw a line out, you almost catch fish. I don't know.
Literally never fails, man. I mean, the apps that we go on. So there's a difference. Like, okay, if you're on a dating app, like say Grindr or something, they're expecting someone over 18. Like nobody goes on Grindr saying, "Oh, I'm going to go try to find kids on here because it's an over 18 app." But, when they come across a kid, they're like, "Well, I don't mind," but they're not expecting one,
Right.
But when you're on like basically, there's the dating apps and there's the social media apps. Like the social media apps like Instagram or something, people are on there looking for children. Like they follow like this guy that we
young adults.
Yeah, yes. Looking for children to, help boost them, but they will go after like young adults, they're just they're good people, of course, right? But so we caught this guy in Devine, Texas, which is like a little bit south of San Antonio, and Instagram is so blatant about this. Like, Twitter tries to, like a whole thing with Elon Musk and Twitter is he's saying he's like trying to take away this illicit material on the platform. There's a ton of it. People say like, oh, it's not actually a big issue. No, there's whole communities of these people that use these certain hashtags. Like when there's the hashtag Dropbox, Dropbox, like the app, whatever, you can send files, but they can't specifically, allegedly they can't post this stuff on Twitter, but they can post a Dropbox, and in the Dropbox, I didn't see for myself, but I can put two and two together. Like the same people that want a younger lady under 18 are clicking on this drop, I can put two and two together with what's in the Dropbox. And, they use these easy ways to get around it. It's like, where you just basically see a house with like one small gate and you can just walk around the gate and get into the house. That's basically all these social media apps, firewalls and whatnot. It doesn't do anything to stop them. And, so on Instagram, we caught this guy in Devine, Texas. He's literally following a page that's for maps and AAMs. A map is a minor attracted person, and an AAM is an adult attracted minor. And he's just following a page for them. The page is just allowed on Instagram. And I'm sure they're just posting nasty stuff on there. It was a private page. But when I saw that he followed it, I knew that he was a guy that was into looking at some type of images. So he goes to meet who he believes to be this 13-year-old, and basically then he confessed to looking at some of these images, and now he's going to should be arrested any day now. He confessed to the detective as well a couple days ago, so any day really should happen.
I was gonna say cheese, but what, you ever heard cheese pizza?
Of course.
Okay, yeah. That's like a code word.
Oh, there's
a ton of code words, right?
Yeah.
They'll have a whole conversation in front of you. You don't even got a fucking clue what's going on. Like I'm like it doesn't quite make sense, like what these two guys are saying, but to them it certainly does.
Right. Like it's confusing. Like with someone like me, I could say I love cheese pizza, and people would like no. But then when I see these adults that are going after younger ladies start using this word, I'm like, well, I'm a vegetarian pizza lover.
Yeah.
But like, it's just very. It's. I mean, I've known about that hashtag for probably like 2 years now. Like them starting using it. And, there's tons of those pages on Instagram that just advertise like, pizza, and sickening. And then they also use this code word called unicorn. I don't know exactly what unicorn I forgot what, but it's something to do with like a younger lady under 18.
Yeah.
And there was a guy in Oregon named Fred Hendricks Jr. who he got. He was so calm for 8 months. Like, there's one reason he's texting an 8-year-old, right? But he was so calm for 8 months. Like, just, hey, how are you today? Good? Oh, work was fine. Okay. Like, very cordial conversations. And then he's like, when we hang out, I just want to bring you a unicorn. And at the time, I was like, I was just like, dude, just get to the point already. Like, I was just thinking this, like, come on, man. But then when I found out what unicorn actually meant, I was like, oh, this guy was way, like, so depraved. And we ended up getting him. He ended up being one of the worst. He said, like, one sexual message. But I didn't know he was on the sex offender registry. And he just confessed to so many victims. And he's currently serving 3.5 years in Oregon. And in Oregon, that's probably, like, a very, very long sentence.
Well, what's funny is that, like, in the state, we'll give them these sentences of, like, 3 years, 2 years, 4 years. And yet, if they're caught with, viewing cheap, cheese pizza,
right.
On the internet, like the minimum of having just like one image is like 3 years in the feds. And typically these guys are coming in with 5, 10, 15, 20-year sentences in the feds. They had a guy from Germany who had been talking to an FBI agent that he thought was a 13-year-old boy. And he was in Germany. He got on a plane from Germany and flew to the United States.
Dang.
They arrested him in the airport. Like, they didn't even set the guy. They didn't even. They didn't even like. Listen, we have these horrific messages or horrific, string of texts going back and forth, and you just got on a plane. Like, you don't have a prayer. So so he ended up going to trial and trying to say, listen. In my country, I have not broken the law. Like, the age of consent is whatever it was. It is like 13 or 14. And the person he was talking, he's like, so in my country, I haven't broken the law. They're like, yeah, but you were talking to someone in the United States and you flew to the United States. So you were intending to do this to someone in the United States and break the law. He goes, yeah, but in my country, I haven't broken the law. Like, going there to do it and not doing it isn't breaking the law. He went to trial. He lost. He got 25 years.
Oh my gosh!
He tried desperately to get the German government to like come to his aid, like their version of like the U.S. attorney or their attorneys to try and say, look, send this guy back to us. No harm, no foul. You can't do like they weren't receptive to helping him in any way at all. He was a thin German guy walking around, had 25 years, didn't know what to do. He's done. Like they're not going to cut you any slack at all with that charge, especially in the justice system, not in the federal justice system. But it always killed me. Like, in the state, had that been a state crime, he'd have probably gotten 2 or 3 years.
Right.
He'd have been on a registry somewhere. He'd have 3. But in the feds, man, they're handing out time like it's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just such a porous excuse to use. Well, he knew it was going to be illegal in America. Like, I'm sure he researched. Like, he knew.
Well,
like,
it doesn't even matter if he didn't, if he knew or not. This is a U.S. citizen.
Right.
Now I get it, and the laws in your country are different. Then great, stick to your country.
Yeah,
victimize your people.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, how many countries can you use that in? And it's like, okay, if a Western white woman went to like Iran and just walked around in like a bikini everywhere,
yeah.
Oh, but I can do that in America, dude. They would laugh and behead her, dude.
Yeah.
It's like not a good excuse. But yeah, I mean, we get a lot of Europeans that do message us. We don't really engage with them because I'm like, okay, I mean, realistically, I'm not going to get on a plane and go to France and get this guy because like I want to, but the thing is, like, just logistically, like, how am I going to have phone service, use Google Maps, driving on a different side of the road? I think, like, whatever.
You got to go with. They got to jump on a plane, fly over here.
Yeah.
I was gonna say there was also a guy that got 10 years. He was a teacher of the year, like 3 years in a row.
Oh, of course.
Used to brag about that.
He bragged about that in prison.
Yeah. He was like, well, I was teacher of the year 3 years in a row. It's like, okay, well, it's not why you're here.
He's been known to cure insecurity just with his laugh. His organ donation card lists his charisma. His smile is so contagious. Vaccines have been created for it. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't typically commit crime, but when I do, it's bank fraud. Stay greedy, my friends.
Support the channel. Join Matthew Cox's Patreon.
He would go once a year to Singapore. And he had gone to Singapore. He had, inappropriate relations with, young girls who were prostitutes, according to him, in that country. And then he had come back to the United States and he had photographs on his phone.
Oh, okay.
And he was engaged in talking with other people online. Somebody got busted. The FBI had read the transcripts where he had talked about, listen, this is where you got to go. And and he had sent pictures. So now you're distributing, and you've just admitted online this. So if they end up grabbing him, he ended up taking a plea for 10 years. Like, you can't go to trial. The guys that go to trial get 25 years. So take your 10. But anyway.
Yeah, we run into a few that are kind of like that. We're talking to a guy in the eastern part of the country. He does these from what it seems like backpacking trips to Africa and stuff like that. And there's another guy. He never really engaged in the talk. I think that's because he's so careful. It's so obvious what he's doing. It's so obvious with who he follows. But I think he just knew we were in the States, so he's not doing that talk with us. But his pictures were littered with him and these young boys. They were posted publicly on Instagram. He didn't send us nothing, but just you could tell. I mean, this guy's in these third world countries and just abusing the crap out of people, man. I mean, they do it. I mean, we caught a Mormon missionary a couple weeks ago in Virginia. I don't know why. Maybe that's why he was a Mormon missionary. He was only 20 years old too, and he was I guess kind of in training or something. And it's nuts because they have to roll in packs of 2, and he was there with his friend. His friend had nothing to do with it, but I basically lured him out of the apartment by going to the front office saying I got a package for him, and because they can't give me the apartment number, but they can call him and say we have a package. So he comes around, just nothing happens, and boom, we go get him, and then the cops come. He's being investigated right now, and I think he will get arrested because we had an arrest in that area too, of a firefighter. So I think it'll turn out well. But so many of these people, sick.
We had a guy who, God, I wish I could remember this guy's name too. He was probably 6'1", 6'2", good-looking guy. Had been in trouble before, but got probation for the same thing.
Right.
Then he got caught with photographs. Went to Coleman for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years. He was there. He was there a few years that I know of. Got out, and while on supervised release, violated his supervised release because what he said was, I had an email address they didn't know about, and they found out I had this email address, and they violated my probation. Now, that's possible. You have to tell them all social media, everything. Even I have to tell them, hey, here's my email addresses that I use. Here's my phone number. Here's my address. They have to come by. But he had one that was an email address, and I remember thinking, well, I wonder how they figured out he had an extra email address. And why would you have one and not tell them? So he ended up getting his probation violated. He came back. They gave him 12 months or something. So he comes back. He's waiting to go. He's waiting to leave. He was in already been in county jail for several months. It's so funny too because I remember my ex-wife had come to see me, and we were in visitation, and she would always be sitting in visitation. She'd go, "What's that guy here for?" I go, "Him." Bank robbery. She'd go, "Really?" I go, "Yeah, he robbed 5 or 6 banks." She's like, "He's so fat." And I'm like, "I know, right? You would think he's huge." I'm like, "Yo," and I would tell her what he did because I knew anybody who had semi-interesting cases, I knew. And then of course other inmates tell you about other inmates. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, "What about this guy?" I was like, "Oh, this." And she goes, "What about this guy?" And I go, "You'll never guess." And she goes, "What?" She goes, "Fraud. She's good looking. She goes, he's smooth." She goes, "Con man, right? Fraud." And I go, "No." She goes, "Bank robber? No. Drug dealer? No." And then I tell her what he's there for, and she goes, "But he's so good looking." And I was like, "I know." I was like, "I know, right? He can have anybody." But here's what happened. You remember I told you about the email address?
Yeah.
After a few months, he gets called up to the lieutenant's office to be served that email address he was using to communicate, because it was connected to like a Facebook page, or Facebook or something. He was communicating with like a 13 or 14-year-old.
Oh my God.
And so they just to get him off the street, they violated his paper, because they can do that just by saying, we're violating here for this. And that you can't, there's nothing you can do. You don't have rights. They threw him back in prison. The judge gave him 12 months while the investigation. He didn't want to tell anybody there was an investigation. Though they charged him, he was looking at something like 6 or 8 more years or something.
Dang.
Like being caught, got probation. Caught again, went to jail. On probation, did it again. And I'm telling you, this guy, this is what we called a sleeper. Sleeper was somebody that was like, no, he looks like a normal guy. Funny, nice. And of course, when they get there, they would always try and tell you they were there for something else.
Right.
You know what always bothered me? They almost 95% of the time they pick fraud. That bothers me. You can't pick drugs. You have to sully fraud. They'd be like, oh, I'm here for fraud. And I'd go, well, what kind of fraud? Credit card fraud. Credit card fraud. That's the charge? Credit card fraud? Yeah, credit. Well, in the federal system, there's no such thing as credit card fraud. It's like access device fraud. It's bank fraud. It's financial institution fraud. There's no credit card fraud. And so already now I'm looking at the guy going, no. And I'm like, and I go, really? What'd you do? And you start, and let him tell me this long story that makes no sense at all, the way they imagine credit card fraud works. I go, where'd you get the social security numbers? Well, how'd you get this? How'd you get the credit cards? You didn't have them mailed to your house, did you? No, I had them mailed to a P.O. box. Really? They mail credit cards to a P.O. box? They don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just let him bury himself. And I walk away. They go, hey, so what's that guy here for? I go, boom, this,
Yeah.
Cheese pizza. No, yep. Chomo. He's a Mo.
Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, like you saw the University of Florida quarterback, like the backup, Jalen Kitna just got John Kitna, right?
I don't know anything about sports.
You didn't watch any NFL in jail?
No, I was writing books.
Oh, you're right. You're doing something productive. Okay.
Listen, the guys that are watching sports, and they're all massive, screaming, hollering. I can't stand screaming, hollering.
Yeah, I get you. But he's like the son of an NFL quarterback. He's playing on the Florida Gators team. He's like the backup quarterback, 19 years old. He just got busted for he got busted for possession.
Oh man. Hey, while I was incarcerated, 2 correctional officers got busted.
That worked at your place?
Well, one was in the medium. This was a guy, Lieutenant Zachary. I only remember his name because he bawled me out one time, threatened throwing me in the shoe after I'd been there like 2 weeks. And I had my chair, there's 2-tier system and there's like a balcony that goes wrap around. You've seen prison shows. Like that prison was like a real prison. And I had my chair sitting on the 2nd tier watching TV, and he goes, you. And I was like, yeah. And I've thrown people in the shoe for that. He just balls me out. So everybody's looking. I'm like, what did I do? And he's like, you have you're sitting in your chair up against the railing. And I was like, the fuck is your problem? Like, okay, just tell me. Like, I just got here, But anyway, probably 2 weeks, 3, maybe a month later, somebody came to me and said, bro, did you see the paper? Boom. Like he went to like a Publix to meet some kid who was like a 14-year-old, girl or something. And to me, bam, they grab him.
Did it end up being like a cop, or was it like...
Oh, yeah, it was a cop. It was all a sting.
Oh, my
and then
God.
Another guy used his computer at the facility. Like, was looking at stuff on the facility. And same thing. It was an FBI sting. He was in a chat room. He got messed up. But it wasn't. It was what was so horrible was that they actually have things on the computers like to spot stuff like that. So somehow or another, they actually knew what he was looking at. There was a log of it. He wasn't even trying. Like, you're surrounded by these guys. Like, you're not even making an attempt. You're just brazen about it. All same thing. They walked him off the compound. Like, they came and got him on the compound.
Jeez.
Grabbed him and walked him off. We never saw him again. Listen, the correctional officers at a lot of these facilities are just they're maniacs. I mean, DUIs, they get into fist fights with each other. I mean, they're just these are the guys that like they couldn't quite be law enforcement.
Right.
A lot of times they're just nice guys. Maybe they did some military time. They got out. This looks like an easy gig. I really don't want to be a cop. I just want to kick back. And those are the guys that are okay. Those are the COs that you're like, he's all right. Like he's just here to get a check. But some of them are just, they're like sadists. They're there to make your life miserable, and they don't have the temperament to be a police officer.
Yeah, we caught a CO in Belmead, Texas, which is McLennan County. That's where Waco is. You know where Baylor's at. Yeah, that's where that is. Yeah, he was a correctional officer, and he was attempting to solicit who he believed to be a younger lady under 18, 5 years under 18, 13, and he just didn't really see much wrong with what he was doing. Like, he's like, I'm sorry, I won't do this again. But he was like, I'm like, when did this all start for you? So basically, long story short, he talked about how he video called one 5-year-old, like a 15-year-old. And I'm like, okay, so was she naked? And he's like, well, yeah. I'm like, did you look? He's like, well, who wouldn't look? I'm like,
most people. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but you know, in the video, I'm like, yeah, that's a great point. Exactly. I can't blame you. And then, you know, this is as he has a sick wife who's dying. He's just sick. I mean, and then it's sad too, because his dad was a CO and his dad was there during the catch. And basically, you know, with these two people being in like
his dad was there. So he didn't come to meet you with his dad.
No,
you guys went to him.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And so his dad was also like a former CO, and just like they just had no idea that I was even going to call the cops. Like these two you know, cops pretty much. They just had no idea that I was trying to get them to confess on. Well, the dad had nothing to do with it, but he had no idea I was trying to get his son to confess on camera. And his son's like 50 years old. They're so clueless. Like they don't ever plead. You know, I know they can't plead the fifth to me. I'm a private citizen, but they never just shut up and just say, I'm done. They're just so stupid. He got arrested, whatever.
Well, I think also being in general, but in general also, correctional officers feel like they're law enforcement.
Yeah.
And they are law enforcement.
They are.
So they're law enforcement, and for some reason, some law enforcement, not all of them, but some law enforcement feel like as a result of being law enforcement, they're above the law. Like it doesn't really apply to them. Well, you know, it does, but I guess because they've been in that situation, and a lot of times they protect their own to such a degree, they start to, instead of realizing like, wow, I dodged a bullet, I need to straighten up, they don't. They become emboldened by it, and they get even more risky. They conduct even more risky behavior.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to another CO now. He's in Oklahoma. He's not ready yet. You know what I mean? He's careful. Like he's a little bit less stupid than the one in Texas, but he's already told me that he's viewed some images before. But you know, it's just technically not enough right now that he's done it in the past. He said, like that's all he said so far, and I'm sure when I confront him in person, I'll know more. But you know, he's getting close. It's been a couple months. He calls us sexy at this point to an 11-year-old girl, and it's like, so the pictures we use. The girl now is 25 years old, but we use her pictures from when she's actually like that age. So nobody can say, well, she's actually this is 25 being passed off as this age. No, this is an actual picture of her from when she's this age. So there's no excuses. And I think he's just very sick, and I think he said the other day that he was watching some stuff on his phone. He didn't say what kind it was, so it could have been adults, but he's getting very close, and I can't wait to go get him.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm. Do you have anything else you want to? I know there's a time grid. You said, we're coming up on one.
Oh, ready?
Yeah. Well, bro, I'm a talker.
It's been fun.
I mean, I wish we could, talk more openly. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things that I just, I just don't want to get. There's actually a guy. Do you remember Brett? Brett Johnson. His channel got taken down. Really? So this guy came here, super cool guy, scammer. And came here like he had like a huge case, like as far as being like, if you could say like the fraudster scammer kind of subculture, he's like at the top, like he's like every scam artist out there like knows who Brett Johnson is, right? So he came and he had a channel and it's just it kind of started it and was doing doing well, starting to get going. I think he did a Zoom interview with a woman that was, and I only got it through a text with him. So I believe it had to do with kind of like sugar daddies, like guys that are paying women that they're going to college and kind of like that.
Right.
You know, I think I forget the name of it, but yeah, where they basically pay them and they pay for their, you know, whatever their living expenses, whatever. And they try and say that it's not prostitution. You know, they try and say it's not, you know, that, but it is.
Right.
You know, and so he had this conversation with this woman. This is what I'm. I may be off, but on a Zoom podcast, like what she was doing, she's running the site. She's this. What he put that up, and they took down his entire website and everything. He's like, I'm trying to appeal it. I don't understand what happened. It's the only thing I can think of. I put the video up within like 24 hours. It got shut down. Everything was was taken off.
Was she like, she wasn't like nude or
No. Like he's saying like, I don't understand what happened. Like he was, and this was a couple months ago, because people were in my comment section telling me, hey bro, you know, Brett Johnson's, his channel's down. Like the whole thing's down. Like
So
you can't even
evil,
find
man.
it. So I contacted him. I said, hey, bro, what's going on? He said, man, listen, this is what happened. He told me, he said, I'm hoping to have it back up in a couple weeks. Well, a couple weeks ago, which now had been like 2 months, was probably a week or two ago, I asked him if it was back. It's not back up. I mean, I can see that it's not back up. And he said, I have no idea, bro. I'm moving. He said, I'm hoping to get it up. We're trying. We're disputing. We're trying to figure out what's happened. I'm moving everything to Rumble. And that's, you know, so...
Yeah, I think that's a good move for anybody, because, you know, and you know what's crazy about YouTube? You know, there's these videos of, you know, they definitely play favorites, and there's these videos of, you know, and these people have kid audiences. There's like these reaction channels that go ahead and they like, you know, they get into they display like sex toys on the camera for people to go see, and you know, kids are watching. They're like, and then these like OnlyFans, you know, THOUGHT, you know, thoughts in the head, of course. Those type of people, they get to just be super hypersexual, and then there's these videos of like Brazilian wax. And like, I don't go watch these videos, but
Right.
I hear this stuff. Like when I'm like, yeah, YouTube's really clamping down on people trying to do good things. They're like, what? Well, this is allowed on YouTube. This isn't allowed. Like, I don't watch too much YouTube, you know. But, you know, they allow all of this stuff. But if somebody's actually trying to do something good or give insightful info on things or to actually educate people, they're really not a friendly platform for that. And I think there's something way bigger at play than they let on.
Yeah, so based on the algorithm, or based on, you know, videos we've seen, like my analytics, like say that my channel should be blowing up. Like people are watching like more than 25% of my videos.
Nice.
Like I'm doing 3, sometimes 4 videos a week. Like we've never dropped off. We've been consistent for 2 years. Like the whole thing. And for some reason, it just I have people telling me, bro, I don't get notified. Like I've got the bell on. I don't get notified of your video. I thought you hadn't posted in 2 weeks. I went and checked, and you've posted like 6 videos. I'm not. And then they'll like, I unsubscribed, resubscribed, hit the bell. Like they'll do the whole thing over again. And I've had that. It's not like it's 3 people.
Right.
I've had dozens say that. So, and the only thing I remember, I was talking to this guy, and I'll let you go. I was talking to this guy one time, and I said, I know it. I've been shadow banned, and I know why. I used to have a Trump painting up here. And this is what, like, and I'm like, the Trump painting got me shadow banned. That's what it is.
It could.
It's very possible.
I think I've been shadow banned like for a month before, because I could tell, like, you know, in the live streams we get like, you know, close to 2,000, but now we're getting like 1,400, and the video views are going way down. But that was just for a month. But other than that, like, you know, especially since, you know, I do stand with a certain country and stuff like that. I mean, you see the amount of views like on that channel, like
That doesn't make, it's outrageous. It doesn't make sense. You know what's so funny is like a year ago when I first a year and a half ago when I first started. So I had maybe 10 or 15,000 views or subscribers. I probably had 2 months straight, maybe 3 months, where I was getting 3,000 to 3,500 new subscribers every month.
Good.
And the videos were getting, you know, 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 views, you know, not a whole bunch. Now my videos get twice as much, and I get about 1,000, maybe 1,100 new subscribers a month, and I'm putting out twice as much content, and it's even longer content.
Right.
I was putting out 30-minute videos to an hour videos and getting 3,500 new subscribers. Now I'm putting out 2-hour and 2-hour videos, sometimes 4-hour videos, and I'm getting 1,000 new subscribers a month. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's no explaining it. I mean, I think I understand it, but like, yeah, man. I mean, it's like with sub count doesn't really matter because, you know, back when I did have a 150K sub channel in the live streams, you know, it would be the same amount of people as like with the 40K sub channel. Like that, I mean, the video views were different, yeah, but like the live stream views, like, okay, why are the same amount of people? Like it's very strange. Very strange.
Well, you know, hopefully things change. Hopefully, you know, I'm just pushing through it. But I appreciate you driving. Yeah, Rumble. I appreciate you driving here. I appreciate you coming. Thanks for squeezing me into your schedule.
Appreciate y'all having me, man.
And so, do you have any platforms that you want to push? I mean, I know your favorite is I know Puggy Pug. I know you love that.
I love that guy. I love that. Just my favorite dog channel. And you know, I like PP Southeast Texas. You know, that's also a great channel. A lot of interviews with people across the country on that channel. Very insightful, I'd say. And then on Rumble, my channel that I own on Rumble, it's called Predator Poachers. So you can just type in Predator Poachers on Rumble. Got about 7K subscribers, and hopefully we get that up soon. Hopefully Rumble gets up and coming because I'm so sick of having to go around and just, you know, say what I mean, but not really say it, you know what I mean? But like, yeah, but I appreciate it. My Instagram is FiddySick and FIDDYSIC, and my Snapchat for the ladies is no, I'm just kidding. Nobody adds me anyway, but that's it.
Okay. All right. All right. So, hey, I really appreciate Alex coming by, and I appreciate you guys watching this video. Do me a favor, and if you like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos just like this. Leave me a message in the comment section. I try and respond to almost all comments, even if it's just a heart, but a lot of times I'll respond if it's worthy of a response. Also, I have a Patreon. I got books for sale. Everything, all the links are in the description. I really appreciate it. So thank you and see ya.